everyone, and welcome to another new movie review. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Brandon.
Today, Brandon and I are going to talk about Man of Steel, which we just went to the midnight for. It is well after 3 in the morning, Brandon.
It is well after 3 in the morning.
This movie was longer than I realized it was going into it. I didn't check running times.
I didn't check it either. Never even thought to.
So, Man of Steel is obviously, in case you didn't get the memo, about Superman.
Superman,
yeah.
That's right.
Starring Henry Cavill, and we've got a story here that is not what I was expecting in a lot of different ways.
Yeah?
This movie has been said by a lot of people to be, and before people saw it, everybody was saying, oh, this is going to be the Batman Begins of Superman.
Okay.
Makes sense to say that because it's written and produced by Nolan. And it's written by Goyer. Mm-hmm. Goyer wrote Batman Begins,
right.
with Nolan. This, by the way, the script credit was all Goyer. Story credit with Nolan, but he wrote the screenplay.
Okay.
Goyer by himself, and it's an origin story.
Right.
So everybody was like, "This is going to be the Batman Begins for Superman," and that kind of scared some people. I'm going to say this right now. This is, in my opinion, the Batman Begins of Superman.
Yeah.
In a fantastic sort of way. And two big things before we really get into it.
Sure.
The first way this thing is kind of the Batman Begins of Superman is that I think, at least for me, it reinvigorates Superman on screen again. We had, interestingly, 8 years between Batman and Robin and Batman Begins. And Batman Begins comes in and made me like Batman on screen again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Refreshed it. We've had 7 years since Superman Returns. I think that's really interesting.
But
it's the same kind of thing.
That's right, and there's good reason for those big gaps.
Yes.
Very good reason.
Exactly. The other thing is,
as you so aptly reminded me earlier,
this is not, I don't think, the character study that Batman Begins was. Batman Begins was a character study of Bruce Wayne. I don't think this is really a character study of Clark Kent. But at the same time, it is an exploration of an idea, a thorough explanation of an idea, or exploration of an idea. Batman Begins, that idea was fear. This appropriately is hope. Fantastic. Just what I wanted to see. What did you think, Brandon?
I thoroughly enjoyed this movie across the board. It gave me information on Superman that I didn't know before. As with lots of these movies, I gain insight into areas where I'm really not familiar. I've seen maybe a couple things here and there, but I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I thought it gave me a great background on Superman himself and kind of seeing where he came from. And this movie had a lot of subtle things in it as well as the larger things that were really cool, especially as we're from Kansas. That was kind of cool.
It's one of the things I enjoy the most about it, actually, and just the sheer amount of it that actually takes place in Smallville.
That's
I was surprised by.
That was actually very good. I appreciated that homage to where Superman came from.
I have seen a lot of things that try to look like Kansas, and I've seen a lot of things with Superman that attempt to look like Kansas, and Smallville never pulled it off, the TV show. This movie, Kansas looked like Kansas.
Yeah,
I don't know where any of that was shot. I've not looked at the background. But.
Right, but if you see small town Kansas, and then you see this movie, you'll get a good idea of small town Kansas.
It's not exaggerated.
I myself have been to many a small town in Kansas. So yeah, absolutely.
At one point in the film, we get to see Clark Kent wearing a Royals T-shirt. I was like, "This is really
so
cool."
That was one of my favorite drops. Was him wearing that Royals shirt. It was fun.
One of my reservations going into the film was that this is going to be Superman's origin again. And I'm always harping on origins. Ironically, my favorite superhero film is Batman Begins, and that's an origin film. That's one of the exceptions that proves the rule. This is another exception that proves the rule, and I think does it just as good as Batman Begins did as far as the origin goes. In that this isn't. It is in some ways a setup film, certainly, but it's not just. We've got to establish this guy's powers and where he came from and everything, and then we'll get a real story next time. The origin is the story, and almost entirely unpredictable. Me as a Superman fan, and I don't want to give anything away, but I will say the introduction of Clark to Lois
Yes.
When that happens, I at that point have no idea where the movie is going.
Right.
Blew my mind.
It was really cool,
I went, wait a minute, you're going there? And I've never seen anything Superman do it precisely that way.
Right.
And that's like 25, 30 minutes into the movie. I have no idea where it's going after that.
It was a lot of fun. I thought it was especially interesting how they didn't do this in a completely linear fashion. You have some things that you have flashbacks and callbacks to earlier times in his life that I thought was a really neat way to do things. I didn't understand that they were going to be doing it that way going into the movie. And then even when I was watching the movie, I was wondering how they were going to incorporate earlier times in his life, because we see him as kind of a 20-something Superman at certain times before we see him as a younger Superman.
That's right. Yeah. When Richard Donner's Superman came out, that film was famously a 3-act epic, where you had where is Superman from, where is he now, and where is he going? In linear 3 acts, you got Krypton, and then you have Smallville, and then you have Superman. This movie doesn't do it that way,
right?
And I appreciated that it got away from that. And let me also say that that the film does a really good job of getting far, far, far away from Donner without losing what Superman is.
Right.
The ideal of Superman is so present in this film. It made me smile all over the place.
Yeah,
all the way
good.
through it. This is a movie about seeing the best in people. This is a movie about free will versus predestination. It's a movie about being expected to go a certain place and do certain things, and when it's all right to accept destiny and when it's time to forge your own. I could talk about this movie for hours. I mean, it's dense. There's a lot there. And what's amazing about that is that it's also a Zack Snyder film, so it's a consummate action movie. Good Lord, is there a lot of action in this movie?
It's definitely an action movie, absolutely. And the action does not disappoint. And the action serves the purpose of the movie, and it definitely did not feel like it was lagging. The action scenes did not seem like they were going on too long for me.
I didn't think so either, and I had with a couple of early reviews from different people. I know Jeremy John said this that some of the action scenes kind of lingered. I can see that complaint. I didn't have that personally watching it.
Right, me neither.
But
there are some longer action scenes, but they didn't lag for me either.
There was most certainly some story being told within the action scenes. I did feel like there were a couple of places where there was some somewhat forced dialogue in the middle of an action scene in an attempt to remind us that there was still plot happening. You know what I mean? Where the ideas were sort of forced into it, where a character would say, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, just to remind you that this isn't just punching people.
Right.
And it's a difficult balance. I get why that's there, but it took me out a little bit. There's some stuff like that.
Well, there was a few things like that. Probably the epic battle scene, I would say. There was a bit of that going on. I won't give anything away on that. But all in all, just a solid movie. Very, very solid.
Like I said, it's somewhat of a setup movie. I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. I'm not going to come down yet and say this is my favorite Superman origin, but boy, it's a really good Superman origin.
It's definitely great.
You said it taught you a lot about Superman. I do want to caution you, because you don't know a lot of comic stuff,
that's true.
that it is a reimagining.
Yes.
Most certainly. There's a lot here that is derived from a lot of different comic book places, and they put it together and they make it work. But then there are other things that are brand spanking new.
Right.
And we'll talk after, because I don't want to spoil anything here, but there are a couple of things, Kryptonian technology-wise especially, and some stuff like that, and even a little bit of Kryptonian background stuff.
Yeah.
I will say that a surprising amount of the Krypton background, and we spent more time on Krypton than I thought we would.
Yeah.
A surprising amount of that background seemed to have come from the Last Days of Krypton novel, which I recommended a couple years ago, and that came out 4 or 5 years back.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where exactly all of that came from, because there might be some source material I don't know that he borrowed from making that, but especially like the relationship between Zod and Jor-El was a lot like it was in that book, and the reason for the destruction of Krypton was also about the same as it was in that. But I was surprised by all of that. The performances in this are astounding. I think everybody's cast right. I really like Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. I wish he got more screen time.
That was really cool. Lawrence Fishburne did a great job. We had Amy Adams as Lois Lane.
I thought she was good.
Excellent. I thought that was so great. I think
she and Cavill have great chemistry. It's not the same thing, of course, as Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, but it struck me as genuine.
Right.
As those performances.
Yes, it did strike me as very genuine performance too. And you mentioned something about Amy Adams having been in
Smallville.
Smallville.
That was one of the first things she did. She played a Crypto Freak in the first season. And I think that's really funny and how far she's come. One thing you and I also noticed right after the movie, or that we looked up after the film, was her age. And I'm surprised. And looking at this movie, she's 38. I'm surprised. She seemed a lot younger than that.
Yes,
but she was definitely the right pick.
Yes.
What did you think of Zod?
Zod was a very interesting character. He is very extremely emotionally driven. For his people, and I don't know how much of that is canon to other things. With regards to how they're bred on Krypton, is that mostly canon?
That is one of the new things.
That's one of the reimagined things. Yeah. So I don't want to give anything away.
Unless that comes from something I've not read. It might have. There's a couple of major Superman things that this borrowed from that I'm not real familiar with.
Well, he's extremely emotionally driven, and I felt that he was definitely a good antagonist.
I thought so too. I don't think he had the presence Terrence Stamp had.
Okay.
It's a different character.
It is.
And that's okay.
But I liked this character.
I did too, yeah. Now, walking in, it wasn't the General Zod I was hoping for, but they went a different direction with it, and they went a very logical direction with it. This is the most military General Zod I've ever seen.
Right, now
and he's a general, and they went that way. And there's very much this Krypton general versus the United States generals kind of thing going on.
Let me ask you
I like
something.
that.
I've got a question for you. In the other Superman movie with General Zod, is he more just someone bent on revenge in the other one?
No, he's a conqueror.
Okay, he is a conqueror in the other one.
He's a
conqueror. I don't remember it very well, but I got more of the impression he's more bent on...
He is bent on revenge, but he also wants to be a conqueror, and there's kind of that here too, but the motivations are slightly different.
The motivations are different. He's more conqueror here.
In Superman 2, it's... but bred for that, and I think that's interesting. In Superman 2, it's a sense of the father thing. He's got to get revenge on Superman for what Jor-El did to him.
Right.
That's not quite the same here.
Right. No, I would even say that based on how you described it, it's almost completely different.
And I like that it's completely different. Having said that, I'm not. Again, I mentioned Jeremy Johns earlier. I watched his review earlier, and he mentioned that, and he said he didn't think that that Michael Shannon was necessarily the only person that could have played this role. I think I agree with that. I think he did a really good job, but it didn't strike me as this is the only guy that could play that role.
Who would you have put in that role?
Well, I don't know. I'm not.
You haven't thought about that yet?
I'm not into the fan casting thing. I'm not good at it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But I don't watch enough current stuff. I mean, I'm not good at it. But all I'm saying is. Like he didn't have the presence to me that made me say, oh, that's the guy that's got to play that role. I thought he was good. I thought he was quite good. Cavill, on the other hand, I can't imagine anybody else playing Superman right now for this version.
Right,
is what I mean. I'm not saying he's better than Christopher Reeve. I'm saying that for this version, that's the guy.
Right, absolutely.
I will mention a couple of complaints. And some of this is certainly simply the nature of the beast. Superman himself doesn't get quite enough screen time in the film.
You didn't think so?
Or at least past... and I know, like you said, it's non-linear, and there's a lot of flashbacks. But I guess what I'm saying is, once we get into the alien invasion story, and it's Superman versus Zod and all of that, I would have liked to have been with Superman more often than I was. There's a lot of places where we're hanging out a little bit more often with Lois Lane, with the military and things like that, and that's all interesting. And that's all interesting, and I'm invested in all of that. I'm just saying that one of the complaints I had about Superman Returns was that Superman doesn't get enough dialogue. I kind of had that here too. I'm also not sure it was avoidable. Well, in a way that I thought it was in Superman Returns.
I was more vested.
I also liked this guy a lot.
Right, of course. I was more vested in this Lois Lane than I had been in previous Lois Lanes.
Yeah, and with good reason, sure.
Yeah, and I thought that they played well together just from the get-go when they first met, and she's the ever vigilant, spunky reporter, the go get the story reporter. And it was interesting the way they played that, and when she first meets Superman, I thought that was a very good scene.
She's almost a vintage Lois Lane, or not vintage, but like classic Lois Lane, in the modern sense. But we've done a lot of modern Lois Lanes now. But then like what is done with her is entirely different than I've ever seen.
She's got all the same principles of what you would expect Lois Lane to have, but she's just got a bit more to do.
Yeah.
So she's actually doing more than being the object of Superman's doing.
And importantly, you said that she's got the same values that she was. Importantly, so does Superman. And,
yes, absolutely.
And what I took from this the most, and what made me smile at the end of the film, is this is a Superman I can I can look up to. This and
that's what Superman's supposed to be. That's what
he's supposed to be, and I totally had that. And I also like that there have been in comics a lot of attempts at modernizing Superman and modernizing the world and looking at the world as the more cynical place it is now, and or that we perceive it as now, and how would people really react to Superman? Would they really trust him? This movie handles that better than anything I've seen in a long time. I mean, I thought Earth 1 did it well. This did it at least as well as that did. It's really good. Anyway, we went on longer than I had planned on going. We're gonna do a spoiler podcast over the weekend. I'm gonna do that with Oliver, and I think Vince is gonna try to be there, and you're welcome to if you've got time. I'm sorry. Anything else you wanted to mention?
There is a couple other things I just want to mention. Certain things that they set up in this movie with little brief things here that will play into whatever they do next.
Right. Sure.
There's a couple of LexCorp logos that appear in different places.
Right.
I only saw the one, and you apparently saw it like 3 or 4 times.
There's like a dozen of them. Yeah. Well, we actually see the LexCorp building.
I see. I missed that completely. I was focused on a lot of things.
But yes, there are mentions of things like that, and there's a lot of comic book stuff that I'll tell you about later that you wouldn't have even known about.
Right.
I will mention there's a couple of characters that I did not expect to see in this film that I love have been finally brought from the comics into Superman movies.
You mentioned also the look of one of the other guys, like a former bully of Clark Kent's.
Well, and that it's funny because that was I'm not going to mention who that was.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even want to go there. But but yeah, there's
plenty of bullies for Clark Kent.
There are a couple. But what I was going to say is that there are a couple of characters that they put in the film that are like the spitting image of what they were in the comics and had been changed in different media in recent years, and they took them back to formula, and I thought it was really cool to see that.
All right.
But anyway, but yeah, that's all details we probably should be careful about spoiling right now. So
that's
anyway,
right.
We'll talk about this stuff later on this weekend. Like I said, I got a lot to say about this film. There's a lot in it.
I'd also like to say, I recommend going seeing this in the theater.
Oh, yeah. But, I imagine the majority of our viewers are planning on that anyway.
Of course, but like the last thing we reviewed, and don't go see that in the theater.
Yeah,
but go see this one in the theater.
In the theater, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, thanks everybody for watching, and like I said, we'll be with you again in a couple days with a spoiler podcast, and Brandon and I will try to be with you next week if we can with another new movie review. I don't know what we're going to see yet, but we'll figure it out.
Anyway,
thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Brandon.
See you later.